Thank you and welcome here to Birmingham University. We've very, very kindly given us this venue as a sponsorship deal for the day to run our own conference. And I'm welcoming you from Sleuth Cooperative, and Jos Kreis is also here, who will introduce himself later. And it's basically, we're just trying to unpick some of the issues around how SMEs can engage more effectively with local government. We've got some attendees here from local councils, SMEs and procurement organisations. We've very kindly got some sponsorship from Infodata. We've also got from Bright Advice, I hear today. DATB, I hear. Who else have we got? I think those are the main sponsors, and just one final sponsor is obviously City Ready from Birmingham, who are donating the event but are actually not attending today. I'm Hilary Simpson. I've worked for over 20 years in local government and am now running a cooperative. I've worked in frontline services. I've also worked in technology and data in local government, and also spent a little period of time in Nesta, the Innovation Foundation, before starting up the Sleuth Cooperative with my colleagues here, who will help you through the day. Adelaide, who is emceeing. Eleanor, who is also helping in terms of methodologies and problem-solving ideas. And Philip, over here, who is also here to help get things moving. Adelaide is going to explain through, in fact, how the Unconference works and take you through the day. So thank you very much for coming along. We may well have a number of people joining us in the afternoon for lunch in the afternoon session, because there's an event going on in Birmingham City Council where they're presenting, I think, their information technology strategy to some suppliers. And some people are going to come over there for the afternoon, so we should have a few more people then. And with no further ado, really, I think I'll turn over to Jos, who's going to say something about the outcomes that we're seeking today, in as far as an unconference can have any kind of agenda.
It's great to be here. My background is largely across the public sector, but I've been an non-exec director of public-private organisations. I've worked in charities, central government, health, local government. Most of my career has been local government. And now, as an independent consultant, most of what I do is to try and close that gap between technology companies, from the smallest startups to actually some of the big household names, and what local government and local public services in general actually need. Some of that is purely around marketing, understanding the sector. It might be about working with both sides on bids, but actually some of it is around getting involved in events like this. So I've come to this event with lots and lots of questions. You probably have as well. How can we sell more? How can we engage better? Who do we need to engage with? What's holding us back? I don't know what your questions are. You know, these might be some of them. And I've also come with lots of preconceived ideas, which I would urge you to park yours, as I'm going to try and park mine as we go through the day. So I have my own views about what is working and what is not working, what SMEs need to do differently and better, and what public service organisations, whether it's national government or local government, needs to do differently to close that gap that I described. But actually, this is about saying, what are the challenges and what are the solutions, and how can we do things better? And what I'm very much looking forward to from today is getting some real insights from you, some fresh ideas, thoughts, possibilities about the solutions that will allow our public service organisations that desperately want to become digitally mature, let's call it that. They want to be successful in their digital transformation programs, which means they desperately need the products and solutions, whether they're proprietary or open source, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. So we need to close that gap, because if we can close that gap, then many of the issues that face the public sector, from health and social care integration, management of waste and pollution, troubled families, crime and the sources of crime, the list goes on. These are the problems that can be solved by, I believe, some of the newer and clever technologies that we've got, provided we lock those better into how they can best be managed in order to get the outcomes that we want. And some of that's around data security, information integrity. Some of it is around understanding where the risks lie, not overselling the product and the solution, whether internal or external. So I just wanted to set a little scene, if you like, as to what I'm looking for, but this is not a conference in the formal sense. You're not going to be inundated with PowerPoint. So I would encourage you to be as open, challenging as you possibly could be today to ensure you get as much out of this as you can, and put as much in, because Hilary and I are going to take the results of this away, and we're going to use this not just in further research and blogging, but I want to use this in lobbying of government. I want to use this in the work that I do with local councils about how they can engage better, and I want to use this to help in the work that I do, particularly with SMEs who are trying to break in, whether through G-Cloud or just responding to tendering.
So in the spirit of kind of no preconceived ideas, I don't want to make any assumptions about what we know or don't know about how an unconference works. But essentially, you guys set the agenda and it's completely directed by you. And I know you probably sent some useful information this week ahead of the unconference about how it works. But the idea is that you come with lots of questions, topics, things that you want to discuss, and you direct them in the way that you wish. So there are a number of roles that you can assume throughout the day. If you want to be session leaders, you can. There's a responsibility that comes with being a session leader. So I think probably the most helpful thing you can do as a session leader is just make sure you frame your question, your topic as clearly as possible, and just be clear about what you want to get out of that session. We will be putting all of the questions, topics up on the wall. So this is the kind of the master wall and the kind of marketplace where we'll kind of put up those ideas. If you do see that there are topics that kind of overlap and there's kind of clear natural linkages, please do, as session leaders, talk to each other and think about whether you might want to collaborate on a particular session so as not to duplicate what's being spoken about. We'll also need scribes in each of the sessions, so we want people to kind of capture obviously what's being said, and we would quite like to disseminate some of this beyond these walls in terms of what comes out of today. And there are kind of, I guess, one of the ironies are that there are rules or unrules of an unconference, or 4 principles and a law, which I think are great actually and can probably be applied to quite a few things and almost become a kind of life philosophy. But the first thing is around the people in the room. So whoever's here are the right people in the room. We're not waiting on any experts to kind of join the conversation. You are the experts. You are best placed to talk about some of these issues. And I think it's quite important that if you kind of care enough to be here, which you do, that really is kind of the only criteria. So that's kind of what we're working with. The next principle is around whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. So it's just not going to work if people try to dictate what the outcomes are. What will be, and hopefully we feel kind of comfortable enough with that. There might be a few kind of control freaks in the room, but if at any point it does start to feel slightly chaotic, that's fine. It doesn't mean we're being any less productive. That's kind of part of the going with the flow and seeing what happens. The third law, if you like, is that whatever time starts is the right time. So we've been quite lax this morning and we just kind of wanted to wait and see who came. So we will start when we start and we will also finish when we finish. And that's kind of the kind of last principle. There's the law of 2 feet or the law of mobility, and that is you can basically move as fluidly as you like. So if at any point during a session that you're at, you just feel like you're not contributing or you become uninterested or you're not learning anything, you can walk to another session and join that session, and that's absolutely fine. There's no kind of awkwardness about upping and leaving a session. We're not going to be, I don't think, really beady-eyed on the clock. We will kind of go with the flow. So some sessions you might find you just need 10 minutes to discuss what you discuss, and you might feel like you come out with a solution or a kind of concrete outcome, and that's fine. Alternatively, you might go on for 45 minutes or longer, and that's also fine. The one thing we won't do is kind of shortchange you with lunch. We will make sure we have a full hour of lunch. The agenda that I think you also sent this week, again, it's all loose, but essentially we're going to be hearing from our 5 sponsors, I think, about some of their challenges, their experiences, some of their realities, and I'm sure that will kind of inspire quite a few more topics and questions that might be sort of bubbling away and might sort of come to the fore after that. And then we'll kind of go into that, well, you know, what have you come with? What are your questions, challenges, and things that you want to discuss? And we'll obviously throw that up. We did hand to most of you, hopefully, and if we haven't to all of you, I apologise, but a couple of these sort of posties, and we're aware that we haven't given you anything to write with. We're not suggesting you use your own blood to write down your questions. So we will give out some Sharpies and markers. And again, you know, you can have one topic or you can have a million, that's fine. And we'll kind of between us sort of group them and kind of ensure that everyone feels fairly comfortable with where they're going, what they're doing. A quick thing on some of the other rooms and just kind of where some of this is going to be taking place. I think from our experience this morning, I think it's quite nice actually. No one's kind of sort of looking down at us, so we can kind of move around quite freely without any sort of passes or codes to get into anywhere. But we've got 3 quite nice breakout rooms upstairs on the 4th floor. And I'm sure one of us will kind of be sort of escorting you around, but essentially you've got 3 rooms that we'll be using, and there's some decent signage, so that's fine. 2 other things I just need to quickly mention is that we will be tweeting today using the hashtag SME Innovate. So again, you go to quite a few conferences and they don't like you on your phone and they kind of like all eyes on them. Again, at None Conference, we're completely comfortable with you being on your phones, and we obviously do want people live tweeting about what's happening today. So please feel free to tweet. Bit of housekeeping, some of you probably will have seen the loo. It's maybe a tad obscure when you come from this direction, but if you do need to use the loos, it's just straight out these doors and to the left. And
Adelaide, I did also spot a few more. If you go
oh, perfect.
Up on the next floor.
Oh, good stuff. Because yeah, we definitely need a few more loos. I haven't spotted any on the 4th floor, but I will when we go up. But I'm assuming that we've probably got enough up there. And then I think just the fire alarm is the only thing. So if there is a fire, and we don't think there's going to be one, we basically go out through these double doors and then through the kind of revolving door that I think most of you may have come through and kind of down the steps. And I think that's pretty much it. But if there are any questions, please do kind of shout now. No?
Any questions? And as we go along, obviously,
Yeah.
Eleanor and
Philip.
and myself will answer. Sorry.
Yeah. Is there a room where we can, for the plenaries, we can sit in the round? It kind of feels to me as if we should be kind of sitting in the round rather than in the left.
Yeah, so yeah, no, that is a good question, and thanks, because I forgot that. So I think the seating is mostly circular upstairs, and even if it is in rows, one of the things as a session leader, or even as a participant, is you can completely change the seating, you can change the format, you can decide if you want to stand throughout that session, if you want to sit, you can, do kind of voting by hands, voting by feet. It's pretty much up to you how you want to run it. I think the only other really important thing is that as a session leader, there is a responsibility to just make sure that people get a chance to speak. So hopefully your questions are quite open questions and they allow for people to kind of discuss stuff, and it doesn't feel too sort of one-dimensional. But yeah, I mean, in the nicest possible way, use and abuse the rooms and kind of, do what you like.
So I'm going to be talking about, or trying to get the session working around SMEs in public sector and how we engage in public sector. There's been a few things. There's a team which is set up, and I'm glad to see that we've got some of our colleagues from Crown Commercial Services here as well this morning. But there was an SME forum which was set up around about 18 months ago, if I remember, and that was all about trying to get SMEs actually engaged into local authorities, etc. in the future. And I think there's a plan to get 33% of spend. I'm sure they're going to tell me if I'm wrong here, but 33% of government spend was going to be going to SME businesses by 2020, if I remember. Okay, so one of the topics I want to really talk about is how do we engage more with public sector? How do you as organisations find out more about what SMEs are doing and what's available in the space as well? Because I think that's quite difficult to understand what's available. I've found through my experiences, we're working out in international markets as well, so we do stuff in Eastern Europe with Lithuania and the governments over there, and we're getting in quite easily, but trying to get engaged here, we really struggle. And we find that we can get in through the larger consultancies, so we get engaged by the likes of KPMG, etc., to help them in their sort of engagements with local authorities, but we really struggle to go in direct. And we did try to do some stuff with Southwark a little while back, which was about 18 months ago, and we were told we were too cheap. So it was quite an interesting conversation and debate we had at that time. Singing, sorry?
Cuts and everything like that, you're too cheap, it's just, you can't
Exactly. Well, that's why it's quite topical. So I'm quite keen to sort of drive that conversation later on and understand what we need to do better to understand what you guys want from us. Actually, so how do we actually make sure that you understand what we can actually offer as a small consultancy and individuals as well as small businesses, but also how do we make sure that we're actually getting through the process, the procurement process that you guys have in place today. So we're not trying to break that process, it's about understanding how we can engage further with you guys, etc.
So is that your question up there?
It is that question up there, and it's being put in for that
Are we
session.
too good to be true problem, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
the second one being, you really don't want to be contracting via KPMG because it's just adding pointless extra cost.
I just want to say they are a good customer of ours, so I don't mind. I don't mind, but it's a case of exactly right. This is why I'm saying it. So we don't mind, but I think there is a better model, and actually there's a cost saving involved as well. But I think it's more a case of can you speed up some of the projects you guys are engaged in today by actually engaging directly with those people that are out in the market who are experts.
So I was going to say,
yeah.
just before we lose that point, is it about having the right sort of route? So sometimes you want to deal with a partner,
Correct.
PwC or a
Absolutely.
or whatever. Sometimes
Yeah.
you want to deal direct, but knowing when and how, is that sort of part of it?
Yeah, I think, Josh, that's a good point, because actually at the end of the day, it depends on the scale of the project.
Yeah.
Some of these projects are so vast and it needs wider engagement, but some of them aren't.
Yeah.
There's some real smaller projects which people are engaged with today, which don't need a large engagement. They're smaller projects. I mean, some of the stuff we're doing in Lithuania, to give you an idea, they've got a massive digitisation program going, and they're really advanced in it. And if you look at e-government around the world, Australia turns out to be number 1, and actually Lithuania is number 2. Okay, and that's it. I've done my 3 minutes, so
Yeah,
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Icon Unabu. I am one of the co-founders of Information Data Hub, a data-centric application, and I also run a consulting firm, Info Data Consulting. We actually work together. And today, what I want to thanks Hilary, by the way. Thanks, Josh. Thank you for having us, and welcome everyone. The topic I want to discuss today, I would like us to discuss, is how do we solve today's challenges with today's solution. I think for far too long, the big organizations have, monopolized the public sector with their expensive software. 5-10 years ago, that was fine. But today, with the advent of technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence, it has actually enabled small organizations to quickly tap into these solutions and come up with solutions that are flexible, affordable, and usable. So this is a topic I would like us to discuss. How do we, encourage or enable small and medium-sized organizations with very, very, pertinent solutions that the public sector can capitalize on? How could we enforce or get it into the mainstream? Because if you look at it, I used to work for large corporations such as Informatica and SAP and the rest. And as very well know, they're very expensive software. They could get away with it 10 years ago, but now with smaller companies coming up with solutions, I think it's high time that mindset is slightly altered, and that's one of the what I'd say the idea behind Data Hub. And if we could discuss that, how do we solve today's challenges with today's solutions? That would be great. Thank you.
Is the idea that a lot of the time people are looking backwards,
Yes.
old solutions rather than forwards.
Yeah, 10 years ago,
to do
yeah,
things that they may not even know about,
exactly.
may not be aware is even available.
I mean,
how do we deal with that issue?
there are a lot of, like you said, with the advent of technology, you could, the fraction of what these big organizations invest in developing the software, a small or medium-sized company could actually tap into the artificial intelligence routines, the machine learning routines to build a solution that is very, very robust and workable. And I don't think the public sector has actually latched onto that.
Because you're getting a lot of traction in the commercial sector,
Yeah,
aren't you?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you're struggling in the public sector,
Yeah.
even though this is a really cost-effective solution compared to some of the bigger players.
Operations such as record linkage, data quality, master data management, traditionally the big companies, big software, expensive software. But I tell you that with machine learning, artificial intelligence, you can implement it at a fraction of that cost.
I'm Mark Bushman. I'm director of a company called DATB, and we have, for the last nearly 20 years now, been developing a platform which enables developers to produce software very, very quickly. I think Ike and I could probably have a very interesting discussion because it sounds as though we're working from the same sort of premise. We do a lot of work in industry, utilities, rail, etc. And over the last couple of years, we've been struggling to establish a presence in particularly local government, where we feel that there's an enormous scope for innovation, which is sometimes hampered by risk-averse attitudes and perhaps some of the prevailing attitudes of suppliers within that marketplace. From a conventional supplier's point of view, big software development, it's a fairly small marketplace. From our perspective, it's actually a very large marketplace because we can produce software very much more efficiently, more cost-effectively than conventional developers. So I think the question that I would ask is, how can local authorities be encouraged to take risks, to innovate, and to work on the sort of minimum viable product basis so that they're not taking enormous risk? Because it is, as I said, it is a risk-averse environment, and rightly so, because it's public services that people are being expected to provide.
Hi, so good morning everyone. So my name's Chris Hankinson, so I work in the Crown Commercial Service. I'm here today with a couple of colleagues, so we work within the technology category at CCS, so we design a lot of the commercial agreements that some of you may use, or some of you may use as customers or suppliers. I guess that what I'd really like to understand today is what can we do better to help connect the right type of people within within the customer base, so the right types of decision makers with a range of suppliers that may offer, some of these types of innovative solutions we talked about, and how can we do that more effectively? How can we lower those barriers to make sure we're getting the right engagement with the right people? So it's really around that. How can we explore that theme? Is there something that we can do around, developing forums? How can we connect the right people to talk about the right things?
Can I just ask something? Do you think those people are business leads? People with budgets who are within the business who are trying to make savings or improve services, or do you think they are the technology people, the technology procurers?
I think it's a good point. I think more and more now, it's the people that own and manage the various business units. So people are having fewer conversations with IT and technology, and it's more around how can I potentially lower the cost of delivering a certain service to our customers within a certain region. How can we reduce the cost of managing waste within our council? So it's actually about having those conversations with the people that are responsible for that rather than IT. But also recognising that there are a vast number of suppliers out there, and how can you do that in an efficient manner? And again, rather than going through a thin prime just to essentially meet procurement obligations. So I guess it's around that. How can we try and fix those types of issues?
Okay, thanks. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm from Southwark Council. We have an environment in Southwark which is not unique, which is where most of our IT solutions are provided by a small number of large application providers. And when we want to do some change or something innovative in order to meet increasing demands of our residents, or to increasing demand on the services, or the ever reducing budgets, we tend to need to go to those suppliers to get them to help us to solve that problem. Now, what I want ideas about, and what I'd like to talk about, is how SMEs can actively engage with us in those conversations in order to be able to work with those large suppliers and with the sort of backbone of the business that we already have, where it's not necessarily practical immediately to go, let's rip it all up and let's start again, let's build a digital council. That's going to be a long, long journey. And until we find a way of working with SMEs and those large suppliers to deliver better services, we're never going to be able to sort of make that change. So there's already some overlap, I think, with some of the other talks that have been pitched, but it's how can we work with large suppliers and small suppliers in an agile way to deliver better services for our residents.
So this is sort of about blended solutions,
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
You know, it's not going to be either or. It's going to be and.
Exactly, yeah. We're desperate for the help in the innovation space that SMEs can respond to much better, but we feel a little bit trapped by the existing applications, which really do run the core of our business.
Hey everyone, my name's Gemma, Hillary's told you. So I did 10 long, hard years at Camden, moving around many departments, trying to influence the sort of digital agenda, struggling a lot with these huge technology companies, which we couldn't really work out or challenge in any way particularly, and all the big stakeholders who were wedded to those big companies who didn't really like the idea of anything new, particularly anything open source. So I then moved to basically a private sector, small company, selling a meeting solution back to anyone who has meetings, which is most of what we did at Camden, one meeting after another. And I've had relative success selling back into those same people that I used to spend all day meeting. And I suppose I'm here just to think about and discuss what is it, that fear of being able to try and do something a bit different with an unproven supplier. How do you crack that fear? Who are the sort of people who are most game to do that? And are there any other techniques? I mean, we're on G-Cloud and things like that, but it seems that there are so many hoops to jump through to even get to the point where you can get a trial in place in a council. So, how do you sort of break through the fear and the anxiety and the terrible bureaucracy of filling out enormous technical things. I mean, I don't mind doing that, I'll do that, but it just seems silly just to get to the point where they're trialling. And I've never had a trial that doesn't go on to be, a bought product. So, what's the fear? And how could we try and think of different ways to get people to just, be a bit more gung-ho? That's it, really.
So, Gemma's from Azalus, I think.
Yeah, so Asius Systems is a big technology company based in Hong Kong, but we have rolled out a small part of that called Asius Convene, based on the fact that we had to have international meetings and share documents securely and be able to annotate and sort of collaborate on those meeting packs. And then we saw that there was obviously a commercial, lot of big companies are doing that commercially, so we pushed that product as one of our many different technology solutions, and it's doing really well in the public sector, NHS and so on. But local government, I've only got 3 clients. Why is that?
Hi there, I'm Chris Riley. I'm from Lancaster City Council. I'm also Vice President of SOCITIM, the Society of IT Management. I'm really coming here today to try and get some solutions to issues we've got. In the districts, we've got no money, we've got no resources, and we don't want to take any risks. And yet, and yet, we have huge expectations. On the 1st of April, my business plan had 15 projects for the year. I then spoke to the frontline customers. We now have 50 projects for a team of 20 people to do in a year. Like was mentioned, we're tied into lots of, being small, we've followed what other people have done, and we've got ourselves tied into a number of big suppliers that don't deliver what we want. When we want to do change, we can only do change at the edges because these big computer systems dictate how we do everything else. So we want to get out of that, and we want to find a way out of that and move forward. I mean, there are 300 district councils that very rarely get a mention. When you talk about local government, it's all about the counties, the unitaries, the Mets, very rarely about the districts, but there are 300 of us. We're all head down. I mean, how many people here are from a district council?
You're the only one.
Everybody is head down, doing the work, how do we get people to look up and see that there are different ways that we can do these things? So really, that's my question. How do we get the outcomes?
Okay, so I'm William. I'm a person of many diverse interests, but what I've done recently is I've laid almost all of those down, and I've got one job doing one thing. I'm the one EU team member for a tiny American startup, which is a buyout from IBM. It does one job, and I think that one job could be really useful in local authorities. But I don't want to be one of these people who comes knocking on the door saying, you know, I have a box of this shape and you have a problem that shape. You know, I want to be human and respect people's busyness and work and so forth. So what it does is single subject search, and the questions that I've proposed are based on that. One is GDPR subject access requests. How do you work out everything you know about the person who shows up and says, I want to do a subject access request? I was thinking last night, how many databases do councils have? And I was thinking, well, they'll have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, literally, I got to half a dozen, and then I rang someone up who works in local government. She said, well, the one I'm working with now is rationalising down to 30. Rationalising from what? From 3 to 400. Yeah. Absolutely right. So how do you do a subject access request across 300 or 400 databases? Interesting. I mean, I would like to, in a way, do a short pitch, but then have a discussion about applicability and how you get there. The other one would be problem families and predictive analytics, because there you've got the same problem, but it's across agencies. You know, you've got a bunch of local authority databases, police, health, God knows what else. And I'm a big privacy advocate. How do you find out what you know about one single entity or family in a privacy-friendly way? So again, that's something I'd like to pitch and see if I'm on the right track, and then see how that's a message one gets to market.
My question is, why can't councils work together, and can suppliers help, and can open source help